And the 1970s didn't cook quietly. It cooked loudly with cream, gelatin, booze, and a complete lack of shame. And this was an era when dinner was a performance and every recipe felt like a dare. A decade where your food jiggled, flamed, or arrived suspended in aspic, and somehow it worked. Tonight we're stepping back into that reckless kitchen to rediscover the dishes everyone loves to mock but secretly misses. These aren't jokes. And these are flavor time capsules. And yes, they're better than you remember. Let's start with the dish that taught America that eggs could be elegant, and Quitchy Lorraine wasn't always a punchline whispered at brunch. In the 70s, it was a declaration. You knew how to cook. You owned a rolling pin. You weren't afraid of cream. And the beauty of it was restraint. A tender crust baked just enough to snap, holding a custard so smooth it barely held together. Bacon brought smoke, and Swiss cheese brought depth, and the whole thing trembled slightly when sliced, like it was alive. It felt European without requiring a passport, and it tasted indulgent without being messy. Somewhere along the way we decided masculinity couldn't coexist with custard, and the quiche disappeared. That was a mistake, and a good quiche doesn't shout. It hums. And once you hear it again, you wonder why you ever stopped listening. If quiche was quiet confidence, and fondue was intimacy turned up to 11. A single pot in the center of the table, glowing, bubbling, daring you to participate. This wasn't food you ate while scrolling, and this was food that demanded eye contact. Wine, garlic, molten cheese, and the slow ritual of dipping bread and praying it didn't fall off your fork. And the flavors were sharp and nutty, rich but balanced, with just enough alcohol to keep the night loose. And fondue vanished when we decided food should be sanitized and solitary. But fondue forces you to share heat, space, and time. It's messy and a little dangerous, and which is exactly why it works. Then there were the salads that didn't apologize. Watergate salad didn't care what category it belonged to. It was green, fluffy, sweet, and completely artificial, and it showed up anyway. Pistachio pudding, pineapple, whipped topping, marshmallows. The texture alone is chaos, creamy, chewy, juicy, and all at once. It tastes like a church basement and a summer afternoon collided. We abandoned it when ingredient lists started scaring us, but flavor doesn't care about respectability. This thing hits joy receptors like a light switch, and it does it in under 5 minutes. When the goal was to impress, and nothing did the job like beef Wellington. This was dinner as architecture, layers stacked with intention. Beef, mushrooms, butter, pastry. Every bite delivered crunch, and softness, earthiness, and richness in sequence. It demanded patience and punished mistakes, which is why it felt important. You didn't make this casually, you committed. And we replaced it with minimalist steaks and called it progress. But stripping away complexity doesn't make something better. Sometimes it just makes it naked, and for nights when ambition met exhaustion, there was chicken de la king. Beige, comforting, unapologetically creamy. Chicken, mushrooms, pimentos, and in a sauce that existed purely to soothe. It didn't excite, it reassured. Served over toast or pastry, it wrapped everything in warmth, and this dish wasn't trying to challenge you. It was trying to get you through the week. We lost it when we decided food had to be bold to be valid, and forgetting that gentleness has a place on the table too. Cocktail parties had their own language, and Swedish meatballs spoke it fluently. Small, spiced, rich, and designed to disappear by the handful. Allspice and nutmeg gave them a warmth that lingered. The cream sauce clung to everything. These weren't background snacks, and they were edible punctuation marks between sips of martini. When they got relegated to freezer bags and cafeteria trays, they lost their soul. Made fresh, they're tender, and aromatic, and deeply satisfying, proof that comfort can still feel sophisticated. And hovering over every gathering like a dairy deity was the cheese ball, and perfectly round studded with nuts, daring you to double dip. Cream cheese, cheddar, Worcestershire, sometimes port wine, and all mashed into something greater than the sum of its parts. It tasted better the longer it sat out, which felt like a minor miracle. It didn't melt, it didn't wilt, and it waited. We stopped making food like this when presentation became about minimalism. But there's power in a dish that owns the room without needing heat or garnish. And dessert in the 70s didn't just arrive, it made an entrance. Crepe Suzette came with fire, citrus, and nerves. Sugar caramelized in butter, and orange zest blooming in the heat, then liquor ignited tableside. The flames weren't just for show. They transformed the sauce into something bittersweet and intense, and the crepes soaked it all up, becoming soft and glossy and dramatic. We decided flames were too risky, but food that makes your heart beat faster tastes better, and that's just science. And before we feared mayonnaise, there was the 7-layer salad. Crisp lettuce sealed under a frosting of mayo, and preserving crunch like a time capsule. Bacon, eggs, peas, cheese stacked with intention. Every scoop was different. Every bite was cold, salty, creamy, and sharp, and it was engineered to survive picnics and potlucks, and it did so brilliantly. We laughed at it later, but it solved a problem we still have: how to make salad satisfying. And this was food that wasn't afraid to be seen. It jiggled, it flamed, it stretched and melted and overflowed. And we're only getting started. And the 1970s didn't pretend every meal was aspirational. Sometimes it was about survival. Hamburger Helper knew that. 1 pound of beef, 1 packet of powder, and suddenly dinner existed. It was salty, uniform, and oddly comforting. The noodles always went soft, the sauce always turned glossy, and it always tasted exactly the same. That consistency mattered. It wasn't trying to impress. It was trying to show up. We've learned to cook stroganoff from scratch now, but we shouldn't forget what this dish represented: a generation fed during inflation, with 15 minutes and a skillet. Then there was rumaki, and a dish that feels like a dare even today. Chicken liver, water chestnut bacon, wrapped, marinated, broiled. The first bite is a shock. Creamy and metallic richness gives way to crunch, then smoke and salt crash in. It's intense and unapologetic. This was an era that didn't flinch at organ meat, and bacon wasn't a garnish, it was an answer. We replaced dishes like this with safer flavors, but nothing modern hits quite as hard or as fast. And the decade was obsessed with escape, and Hawaii became shorthand for that dream. Pineapple meant paradise, even if you were eating it from a casserole dish in Ohio, and Hawaiian chicken leaned into sweetness without apology. Soy sauce, brown sugar, vinegar, pineapple juice. Sticky, tangy, bright. The fruit wasn't a novelty, it was balance, and warm pineapple cuts through salt in a way few ingredients can. We've become weirdly defensive about fruit and savory food, but the 70s knew better. And acid and sugar wake everything up. In a sea of ranch dressing, green goddess stood apart. Herbal, sharp, alive. Anchovies added depth, tarragon added intrigue, and then suddenly salad felt intentional. This wasn't diet food. This was flavor pretending to be virtuous. And it coated greens in brightness, and proved that freshness didn't have to mean boring. When it vanished, we lost something quietly sophisticated, and dessert found religion in carrot cake. Oil instead of butter. Nuts, raisins, spice. It was dense, moist, and unapologetically textured. And then there was the frosting. And cream cheese, tangy and sharp, cutting straight through the sugar. This cake didn't crumble. It held. It felt hearty enough to justify a second slice. And we dried it out in later decades, chasing lightness. But the original version understood that satisfaction comes from substance. Chicken Kiev turned dinner into suspense, and a golden crust hiding molten garlic butter, waiting to escape. The moment you cut into it was dangerous. Butter rushed out, flooding the plate, and turning everything into sauce. The chicken steamed itself from the inside. It was messy, dramatic, and unforgettable. We abandoned it because it demanded precision, but food that interacts with you feels alive. Kiev didn't just feed you. It performed. Steak Diane followed the same philosophy. Fast, flashy, rich. Thin beef, hot pan, and butter, Worcestershire, mustard, brandy. The sauce came together in seconds and tasted like it had been planned for hours. It was hotel dining at its peak, and efficient elegance. We called it dated and moved on, forgetting that speed and depth don't have to be enemies. When dessert turned dark, Black Forest cake ruled, and chocolate sponge soaked in cherry liquor, sour cherries layered with whipped cream. It wasn't sweet for the sake of it. It was bitter, tart, boozy, adult. And we replaced it with sugar bombs that forgot balance mattered. This cake understood restraint. It tasted like winter evenings and long conversations. As the decade ended and color crept back onto plates, pasta primavera was a rebellion against brown food. Crisp vegetables, cream, garlic pasta. It tasted like optimism. The crunch mattered, and the freshness mattered. It wasn't health food, it was contrast. It signaled a shift without losing comfort. Frugality got creative with porcupine meatballs, and rice hidden inside beef swelling as it cooked, stretching dinner further. Soft, fluffy, soaked in tomato sauce. The shape made kids smile, and the economics made parents breathe easier. Time and heat did the work. Nothing wasted. If you wanted to impress without spending, Salmon Mouse did the job. Cold, creamy, and molded into something absurdly elegant. It was a dip pretending to be sculpture. Lemon and dill brightened canned fish into something refined, and we mocked gelatin and lost an entire category of clever food in the process. Swiss steak wasn't Swiss at all. It was patience. Cheap beef pounded thin, and braised for hours until it surrendered. Tomatoes, onions, flour thickening everything into gravy. This was time as an ingredient. It taught toughness how to soften, and grasshopper pie leaned fully into indulgence. Mint chocolate, marshmallow booze. Cool and light after a heavy meal. Dessert as a nightcap. Neon green and unapologetic, and it knew exactly what it was. Deviled eggs never left, but in the 70s they were mandatory. Overmixed, overseasoned, dusted with paprika. And they disappeared first because they always do. Simple. Perfect. Then came the cake that drank. Harvey Wall banged your cake to a cocktail and baked it into sunshine. Orange and vanilla herbs moisture for days. Easy, boozy, joyful. Baking didn't need to be pure to be good. And finally, the impossible pie. Batter poured into a dish, an oven trusted to sort it out. Crust, custard, topping, all forming without intervention. It felt like magic because it was. Chemistry doing the heavy lifting. Looking back, and it's easy to laugh at the molds and the colors. But the 1970s cooked with courage. It wasn't afraid of richness or ease or pleasure. It fed people, brought them together, and didn't apologize for it. So invite someone over, melt the cheese, light the flame, make something that jiggles. Because food should be felt, not filtered.